Good afternoon, everyone. This is Arman Rusta. I'm the CEO of B Labs Ventures, and today we will be covering a very popular and trending topic, ICOs, and specifically ICO marketing. Now, our background and my background over the last 20 years has been essentially marketing and building startup tech companies. So it really flows very well in terms of all the same practices that we've seen evolve and the evolution of digital marketing, the really advent and creation of digital marketing back to the early 90s, all the way through how we're using those social and digital channels today to launch and build tech companies. So this whole space of ICO marketing, blockchain, cryptocurrency companies are really leveraging the same platforms and tools that we've seen kind of come to fruition and come to help launch and support other successful tech and startup companies over the last 10 years. So there's some of the same, and there's certainly some nuances. There's a lot of new language. Blockchain itself brings a lot of new kind of technological language and new ways of doing things that I think represent kind of an evolution over the kind of previous way of doing things. And that's the nature of technology, isn't it? That we're going to continue evolving and finding new ways to innovate, share information, and bring new products to market. So I feel that our agency, Blue Liner, the marketing agency that's at the center of our own venture building ecosystem, has its finger on the pulse, is advising on and driving multiple ICOs as we speak. So we can speak from firsthand experience when it comes to ICO marketing. And this 7 pillars framework that we've developed over the past 17 years, implementing thousands of marketing campaigns for hundreds of different clients across a variety of industries, that has really distilled down into this 7 pillars framework. And I argue that that framework and those core principles that drive it are just as applicable to the ICO crypto blockchain market as they were to pre-blockchain companies. So let's take a dive in, and I want to look at and share with the audience here where we're coming from in terms of B Labs Ventures. So B Labs is the venture builder, the parent company and owner of the marketing agency Blue Liner, as well as a handful of tech startups, of which KidCoin that you could see to the left there being the first major blockchain project that we're unveiling out of B Labs. So again, we're very knee-deep, hands-on, and right in the midst of the ICO marketing process for KidCoin. So I'll be able to share some of our experiences as well as reflect on some ICOs that have been finished already that have completed successfully. And 7 pillars that we can see at the bottom of this chart here is the education company, basically how we've evolved and developed the 7 pillars philosophy, principles, best practices, and through that have created courses and webinars like the one we're on here today, as well as live, in-person courses and certifications to help entrepreneurs and marketers develop and learn how to apply this framework. It's a very scientific and as we love to say, ROI-driven tactical framework, and it also has a philosophy that really stands the test of time. And I hope to share a good portion of that and demonstrate that here today. So let's look at ICOs, initial coin offerings, similar to initial public offerings in the traditional securities markets. ICOs, why are they unique? They give startup companies a chance to raise capital in kind of a crowdfunding sense, without having to give up equity, actual pure equity and ownership in their companies. They give consumers, retail investors, and people worldwide the chance to participate and own a piece of a startup company that they believe in. Most of these projects have been funded before actually bringing revenue and product to market, but that's starting to evolve and change a little bit. You could see the chart here for ICOs in 2017. Obviously, we're in 2018 already, but now that we have a full year of data under our belt, 2017 really was the explosive year, the year that ICOs and crypto blockchain companies came onto the map. So look at some of this data, over $5 billion raised through ICOs, 435 successful projects raising an average of $12.7 million. Now, of course, the 10 largest projects raised a big chunk of that, but it's not over 50%, it's only 25%. So that other 75% was spread across the other 425 successful projects. And on average, tokens returned almost a 13x on the initial investment dollars. But a lot of that happened in the run-up in 2017, where everything was doubling, tripling, seemingly on a monthly basis. That's obviously changed quite a bit over the last 90 days since we've seen several corrections. So I think that number, if we looked at that number again in 2018, we don't quite have all the stats yet for 2018 since the first quarter is still the one that we're in. I suspect we're going to see that number dampened a lot in early 2018, as I believe it's reasonable because the run-up was incredibly unsustainable, no doubt. Yet there's still thousands and thousands of ICOs projects in the pipeline right now. Just because people say they're starting one or get started with an ICO doesn't mean they're going to complete it. There's a lot of hurdles legally, financially, and marketing-wise, which is going to be our main focus here today, how to, at least from a marketing standpoint, orient and organize your ICO to maximize your chances of success. Another look at the same data we just peered at. Now from a monthly point of view, you can see the trend. January 2017 was small, just $2 million there, whereas by the end of the year, we were doing over $1 billion per month. And that trend has continued from December into at least January and February. We don't have the March numbers quite yet. And by country, it's also been vast. I mean, there's obviously US investors have been part of this, but this is truly a global phenomenon. Cryptocurrencies, blockchain companies are being founded across the globe, and the investors are also participating globally. Sometimes it's interesting to see a company that might have a focused product in Europe, let's say like WePower, which is focused on sustainable energy, having investors from over 50 countries. So just because WePower isn't going to have a product in the US doesn't mean US investors weren't interested in supporting and investing in that mostly European-focused energy company. And we're seeing a lot of that, obviously a lot of investors out of Asia as well. There's a number of very strong markets from an investor standpoint as well as from an entrepreneurship and company building standpoint. And that's going to factor into some of the best practices that I highlight here today. So here is the overview, really, of what we're deeming at this point the 7 main pillars for ICO marketing. Now, I'm also going to review the 7 pillars framework on a whole, 7 pillars of digital. It's more than just a list of 7 items. It's a whole framework, a whole philosophy of how to approach and think about marketing, whether it's, again, in the blockchain space or not. But as we get to specific domains like cryptocurrency, I felt it was important to have this conversation to see how the 7 pillars can adapt to and really be utilized to supercharge and succeed in the ICO space. So let's just leave it on this slide for a while and talk about each of these 7 items. First and foremost, we need a great white paper and presentation. That's really the first thing that people look at. It's amazing that this whole space kind of took a business plan and essentially renamed it, because in my eyes, all a white paper is really a type of business plan. It's a bit different than a traditional business plan, and there's no one hard, fast rule on how long your white paper has to be and on exactly what needs to be in it. There's a lot of innovation in this space. The first white paper from Bitcoin was, I believe, under 15 pages, and it was very technical in kind of a philosophical overview type of way, describing the technology, the need for it. Whereas a lot of white papers nowadays are more kind of give an overview of the team and the marketing approach and things of that nature. I believe the white paper has to have three essential elements here. A very clear description and overview of the vision. What's the real story? Why is there a real need for whatever the product or service is, and why is that need really relevant to the blockchain? You know, just taking X, Y, and Z company that's off-chain and saying we want to be blockchain now because it's a good way to raise money, that gets sniffed out. And people who are purists in the space and major investors in the space can sniff that out and see where the story and the vision doesn't really have coherence. So that's first and foremost. Two, the team. The team has to be solid, has to have experience in the respective area, whether it's fintech or media or whatever aspect of blockchain your company is highlighting. The team obviously has to be solid, both the management team as well as advisors. Advisors take on a huge role in the sense of the white paper and the landing page that you have for your ICO, and hopefully also some relevant blockchain experience. Even though the field is so new, only several years old, having people who had some early successes with other blockchain ventures, maybe have been through ICOs before and have that experience, certainly helps when those types of people are listed on your team. And then, of course, the product, the tech. If there is a beta or if there is some kind of technology already existing, all the better for your ICO. If people can have or see a demo, that will only increase your chances of being able to attract those investors. Although I would put a caveat on this saying, if you don't have a product yet and then the vision and the team are very strong, that can compensate for not having the product ready, because for all intents and purposes, part of the reason people are raising money through ICOs is to actually build that product. So you have to have the vision obviously first and then the team in place to create it. That's why I put it third on this list here, this kind of sub area of the white paper and your core company's presentation. It is ideal to have some kind of tech, but if not, the vision and the team could carry you through. Now, since the ICO process really takes at least 3 months, if not 6 to, in some cases, up to a year to get through. It's not that people pull off an ICO in 1 month. I would say you need at least 3 good months of preparation to get things in place, and then you need to set up to a 6-month timeline to go through the various rounds of funding that we'll talk about in a little bit, the tranches, point number 6. So throughout the course of that 6 to 12 months, you'll be raising capital in different tranches and utilizing that capital to build your product. So even if you don't have a beta or a demo right at the outset when people first start hearing about your project, you could show them in your roadmap how you're going to get to that place, so that before the full and final public sale of your tokens, you would have something to show for your early work. The second major point here is tokenomics, meaning what's the model for your token sale? How many tokens are they? Are they restricted in any way? Is it a utility token? And if so, how will it be used in your ecosystem? There's obviously a lot of legal issues and debate around that right now, but putting that aside for just a minute, people need to understand why a cryptocurrency or a token is important for your product. Is it a payment? Is it a token that you expect to be used in a wallet? to make payments to different merchants, or is it something specifically to utilize within your own website or app or ecosystem? And we are going to take a look at some examples as we go through the list here, just to showcase what some other folks are doing that's working in this sense. So again, the token model needs to be clear in terms of how you're breaking up that initial distribution between founders and other management members and people in the company, similar to a stock pool that a traditional company would have, and then how you're opening up those tokens for the initial investors in the ICO, and then how additional community members or eventual customers of your product would be able to acquire or mine or mint tokens. I'm not going to cover too much the whole mining process. It's important to the underlying company, but not as much in the particulars of ICO marketing. Now, the third point is jurisdiction. Now, this is a legal and governance concept, so why should it be part of ICO marketing? Well, it is, because investors do care about where your company is located, where your operation is. It has implications on them, tax-wise, legally, whether they could even participate or not. There's obviously a lot of talk now about U.S. investors and SEC and other types of regulation, as well as China and certain countries that are taking a more heavy-handed approach or a more regulated approach. And then ICOs are just saying we're not going to accept investors from those locations, from those countries. And that is, it's an understandable strategy. It's something we're going through with KidCoin right now. Our goal is to be as open as possible globally in the US as well as every other country, because KidCoin's focus is blockchain-based family finances, financial literacy, and we believe every child, every family could benefit from our products. So we don't want to exclude them from being able to utilize our products. But of course, when you're offering financial services and products in any country, each country has its own laws and regulations, and we are going through those decisions right now as far as which countries are going to be in kind of our tier 1 segment that we want to have as customers right away, which of course includes the US. It's where we have a lot of experience. It's where we know there's a real market, an active market for our product. So of course, because we want to offer our products to people in the US, we don't want US retail investors, everyday families, a lot of which are non-accredited, don't have that threshold of 200K or more in annual income or $1 million or more in actual assets. We don't want to cut out those folks. So it's a little bit tricky right now. The governmental structure here isn't making it easy, but we're working with our legal team to figure out how to do that. So that's why jurisdiction is an important element of your marketing, because people that don't necessarily want to deal with too much regulation appreciate certain jurisdictions like Malta and Gibraltar, Cayman Islands, Switzerland, that are more known as being more crypto-friendly. And that's actually a good point to consider in your marketing, where you're actually going to be formed and which jurisdiction out of which you're going to be issuing your tokens. It does matter to investors. Number 4 is community, and this one can't be highlighted enough. If there was only one thing to focus on above everything, that would be the one. Community, which otherwise is known in 7 Pillars language under and as social media. So community building and management through AMAs on Reddit, blogs on Medium and other places, 24/7 community engagement on Telegram primarily. All these new and emerging media properties and social networks have really been empowered and taken to another level by blockchain companies and by ICOs. So it's been very interesting to see that. Being in multiple countries and being able to have investors from, let's say, the US, Russia, Korea, China all at the same time means you also need to do a lot of localization in terms of multilingual engagement, translation. So you need to have people in your team that can do that, and you need to make sure that you don't bite off more that you can chew there. If you're going to go into a market, you have to do so properly with the right type of support of people that can not just understand the language, but also understand the culture, because the way people approach things and how they adopt certain products, not maybe, but is very different from country to country. So localization, critical, and engaging your community, answering their questions, taking their feedback. The point of social impact is key, because people in the blockchain space generally want to invest in projects that are going to have a social impact and not just be bottom line driven for a small group of shareholders, but bottom line driven for whole countries, whole communities, movements. Giving participation incentives through bounties and airdrops, which essentially, to summarize what a bounty is, it's a way for, let's say, KidCoin, if we would use our example, would offer 100 tokens or 1,000 tokens to anyone that posts a blog reviewing our demo or our white paper. And if you post a blog entry, or let's say you put up a post on Facebook and you have more than 100 friends or followers, we're going to reward you with some tokens. So that's how a bounty program works. It's defined by the company, and then people sign up to say they want to participate, and then they have to prove that they've done the action that merits the reward, and they get that bounty. Airdrops work somewhat similarly, but don't always require that action. You don't always have to do something in a marketing sense for the company to receive airdrops. You might just receive it because you're part of the community and you're giving good feedback and you're kind of supporting the company as maybe an early adopter in some way or another. So those incentives help to keep a community happy and keep them engaged. Point number 5 here, events and conferences. If you're launching an ICO, you need to be out there. You can't just hide behind the computer in the office and hope that people will hear about your project. Of course, you could market your project, you could advertise it, but being physically out there, meeting people, speaking at events, it creates a good cachet. It obviously gets you out in front of people that can ask you tough questions, but that can also write checks or send you some Ether or BTC into your pre-sale. It's an important thing. I've been at now well over close to 15 conferences, and I've spoken at a bunch, spoken on some panels, had booths. It's costly. It's not cheap. I spoke to someone, one of the founders of Hoku that launched a successful ICO recently. I forget exactly how much they raised, but I believe it's over $20 million. And they spent about $1 million on their overall ICO marketing. Doesn't mean everyone has to spend $1 million, but going to these events and conferences certainly isn't cheap, especially if you want to sponsor some kind of panel or speak or pitch. There's usually entrance fees for that start at $500 and go up to $5,000, $10,000 per event. So you have to pick and choose carefully, with the right audiences in the right markets. So if you're going to have a product in, let's say, the US and Europe, obviously doing events in those particular markets makes more sense than doing an event in Canada or China. Point number 6, tranche timing, which is essentially the timing of your different rounds of fundraising and how you price them out. Obviously, companies have been successful in this space, creating kind of a sense of FOMO, fear of missing out, by showing that if you participate by this date, you can get X price, this much of a discount, 5 cents a token, versus then the price goes up to 7 cents and 10 cents. So being very clear in your communication about when the prices move or when there's a max or cap, and that cap is actively being reached, the more transparent you are about that and show that in your materials, on your landing page, in your white paper, through your social channels, your Telegram channel, the more you're going to create a sense of urgency and a sense of interest in people getting in the earlier rounds. Now, of course, that can also work against you if you're launching a round and it's not being fulfilled quickly. That can also work against you. If people are seeing that there's not traction and not active interest, it might fizzle, and you might have to consider opening up and changing your dates midstream, which is not ideal and not generally something that you want to do, but companies have done it, and by doing so, they've realized usually that we need more marketing juice and effort to support the demand here before we start setting these cutoff dates. So tranche timing and having more flexible periods is something that's important. By flexible, we mean keeping the periods open a little bit longer, just in case it takes you a longer time to reach those goals. The seventh point here is the rating services. And we're going to actually take a look at a couple right now, like ICObench, ICO Ratings. There's many, many, many of them, and there seem to be popping up more of them every day. And these rating services essentially look at different ICOs, and they have analysts, and they evaluate them. They grade them. They grade the teams, the technology, the white papers, etc. And it gives investors the chance to come in and kind of peruse around and see what types of ICOs they may be interested in investing in. I think they're good services in general. Some are better than others. The conference I was at yesterday, ICO Ratings Summit in New York City, is one of the ones that I appreciate, that we're actually planning to participate with. Again, it's costly, so you have to, everything on this list you have to budget for. And we didn't really list here, active media, but under the community point there's media and spending options. And these rating services, I think, are a great investment. They'll start at as low as $5,000 or even maybe $1,000 or $2,000 to get a basic listing, to up to $15,000, $20,000 to have a kind of a premium listing. And the rating services can also do auditing of your white paper to give you feedback. So again, it can be part of a process of improving your presentation and improving your materials. Let's take a look at a couple of rating services. Right now, okay. So we have that screen up there. Okay, I need to come off the presentation and, okay. So ICO Ratings, what I mentioned yesterday, this is the home page. This was a summit that I was actually at yesterday. And here you see they're listing a bunch of companies, least risky projects, and different investment ratings here, the ones that are positive, stable, newer ones that they just rated, and a lot of different information that can be seen here. Now one could go into a base here. So here's a way we can go and see past versus upcoming. Let's say I'm interested in participating in upcoming ICOs. And then I can sort them by industry or risk score, hype score, start and end date. So let's go and see who's getting the most hype right now. Okay, looks like the Abyss is getting some hype. Also Datecoin. So let's click into one of them here, the Abyss, which is in the gaming and VR industry. Then you could read an overview, click on the white paper. You can see that they've been rated generally positively by ICO Ratings. And you could look at some more details as far as how much money they're raising. So all the kind of details that you need to have for your own project. A lot of details, their bonus programs, as I said, tranche timings, their token model. All the things we've covered are represented here. Their bounty program, their legal jurisdiction, country limitations, they're registered in Switzerland, their different social channels, look how many of them they have. And let's say we clicked on their Telegram just to go over into it. We can view this group. That might force me to log into my Telegram, which I'm not sure I want to do right now, so let's come back out of that. And they're getting a lot of hype, so let's take a look at their website to see how they're doing with their landing page. Okay, so pretty nice. Let's kind of do a little analysis of the landing page. I like that bar across the top, letting you know like the key dates of the token sale, warning you about scams, which there are a lot of in the space. They've had here over 100,000 registrants, which is great. That's the kind of thing that's a little leaderboard here, going to create some demand. Okay, gives you clear calls to action to register. And again, as I said, a lot of innovation here. White paper and this, whatever they're calling a smart paper, which I have no idea what that is, but it may be just, and then a one-pager summary. So they're giving you some different options. White paper is what everyone knows about. One-pager, people generally understand, and it's a nice way to, let's say, take a look at a quick summary of the company, what it is in one quick page. And not sure what the smart paper is, but not going to venture and guess right now. Their token sale in the US under Reg D, which is smart, I believe. Helps them stay out of trouble with the big regulators. And then again, all the key things we mentioned before. Who's the team? Who's behind this? Well, there's some team members, key leaders, founders that one could read more about. Go to their LinkedIn pages. And there's the kind of diligence people do. Investors want to see that, okay, these guys got a good rating from a rating agency. There's a lot of hype, apparently, with all the different community members they have. Looks like they have some distinguishing features from their competitors that are listed here. Roadmap, which I haven't been through, but looks like it has all the typical kind of trappings of a solid roadmap. Token distribution model, tranche timing. All the things we've discussed are all outlined in here, which is likely why they're getting a good rating, as well as apparently it looks like they have a good product. Having workflows and diagrams like this explaining how your smart contracts work and how different members of your ecosystem can kind of utilize your product is certainly helpful. So any kind of infographics, quick visuals, diagrams are very helpful in any kind of your advertising and communications. And the good old explainer video. Let's take a look. It's a minute long. I haven't actually seen this before, but having a 2-minute or less explainer video with this title, How the Abyss Platform Works, is something highly advisable and recommended. Let's see, let's look together and see how good it is. I'm going to start that again, maybe with the headset out, then I'll play here. Let's start that again. Just a minute long here.
Kevin loves video games, and he wants to capitalize on his hobby. Now, it's made possible by The Abyss, a next-generation digital distribution game platform. Kevin got registered on the platform and invited his friends using his referral link. They improved their characters by purchasing swords, armor, and other items, and our guy is rewarded Abyss tokens for that, readily changeable for the Abyss in-game shop discounts, while fiat money is also acceptable on the platform. Kevin's friends invite their friends, and they invite theirs, and so on until they reach 5 levels. Expanding referral networks brings even more tokens. Kevin also participates in our motivational program. He makes video streams and writes about video games. He gets likes for his activities and earns Abyss tokens along the way. And sometimes he completes tasks for the developers for rewards. Want to be like Kevin? Join the Abyss digital distribution game platform now and claim your crypto reward. Kevin.
All right. Doesn't necessarily answer all your questions about about the business, but it's a nice little overview. And as you can see, most of these explainer videos are some kind of animated fashion. Doesn't mean they have to be. It could also be, you know, the founder or the CTO of the company talking, or it could be some other kind of live. What we didn't see here was an actual live product demo of any kind. It was all kind of animated and kind of gamified, which again works best, easiest to produce in that light, but there's a couple of different ways to go about that. But the explainer video is definitely part of something that I would recommend. The other ICO rating company I just want to quickly point out is ICObench. Let's take a quick look. Browsing ICOs. I like their filtering system where you can search here. Let's see, ones that are rated 4+. I don't see why people would want to invest in ICOs that are rated lower than that. So that's going to filter out some. The status, active, upcoming, ongoing, ended. Again, the only reason one would want to look at ICOs that have ended, and this is really more advice from an investor standpoint, is because maybe you couldn't get in that ICO because you were in the US and they weren't accepting US investors. After it's ended, you would anticipate that it might be traded on an exchange soon. So you want to see what's ended, let's say like AdHive, which I know about, and some of these others I've seen before, BitDegree, nice one in the education space. So because they've ended, now maybe I could look and see what exchanges they're on and invest in those companies a different way. But in this case, let's see, active or upcoming. The difference there is upcoming means it's not actually open yet for investors. Active means it's current and actually taking investment. And ongoing as well, similar to active. So now I've filtered down in a couple of ways. I could also filter by country, with or without whitelist. Obviously, if you're doing an ICO, you could and should have a whitelist with proper KYC and AML, know your customer, anti-money laundering, and all those types of basically background checks to make sure you're getting quote unquote, clean investors and money. Oh, and this one's interesting, trading on which platforms, which exchanges, but again, that's going to be for ones that have ended. So this is a good way to kind of whittle it down, and then again, you can click in and read. Again, sometimes the explainer video is right there. I like how ICObench has it right there. And then you could see the ratings by 27 different experts have rated this particular ICO. And you could see how they rated the team versus the vision versus the product, the three things that I highlighted before that are key in the white paper. And then you could actually see the breakdown amongst different rating folks and who the raters were, which I believe is important. So Nathan gave them 5, 4, and 4, whereas, let's say, Daniel gave them 4, 3, and 3. And you could see how their particular ratings were weighted and what the particular comments are. So that's all a great part of diligence, which means if you're actually launching an ICO, you want to be on these platforms and hopefully positively reviewed, which means you'll have to take some feedback and make some improvements and make sure that when you actually do get up in front of this audience for potentially critical and constructive feedback, that you've kind of thought through and looked through what the best practices are to solidify all these things, your team, your vision, your product, and your marketing approach. So there's a lot of work to do. People that think this is easy or a quick way to raise capital are certainly off base. Maybe it was easy for certain companies, a year ago, but now that there's more eyes on this and there's more players in the game, it's more competitive. And just like building any company pre-blockchain, it's hard work. It's hard work, and only a small percentage of people are actually able to make it all the way through to the top. So just kind of going back to the presentation here, and we've got about 15 minutes left of the overall webinar. Again, back to this high-level screen. If there's one takeaway slide, this is the one, the main kind of 7 focal points. But what I'm going to do right now is actually go through our traditional 7 pillars model a little bit as we kind of keep talking through how our traditional model and framework maps very well into ICO marketing. This is just a great quote from one of the foremost business leaders of our time, that's quoted probably more than anyone in MBA programs and in business texts, has authored a lot of great business fundamental books. And these are the 2 most important functions in a business, marketing and innovation. So I think it just really highlights and backs up what we're here to focus on today. You have to have an innovative, great product, but then it needs to be marketed and presented the right way. Now, the fact this has never been truer than it is in the digital age that we're in, and especially in the blockchain age. This market of 7 billion plus people on the planet are all now able to participate in some way or another. And that's part of the beauty of cryptocurrency and the blockchain and in the decentralized aspect, that the unbanked, I've heard that word at every conference I've been at, people that can't somehow either afford or don't have access or aren't seen as good enough in the eyes of banks in various countries to have a bank account, but they do, for the most part, have mobile phones. And those folks now, through different apps and tools and blockchain-based technology, can get access to cryptocurrency and actually have a more satisfying life and actually be able to get the things they need. So how mobile is combining with blockchain and crypto to connect people that typically couldn't be as connected into different marketplaces, that's a very encouraging sign. So if you're launching an ICO in a crypto-based company, maybe or maybe not the unbanked is part of your market, but in general, access to the 7 billion plus people on the planet has never been more possible than it is today. Now, how have we traditionally, or when I say traditionally, I mean through the digital revolution, reached out to these folks? It's been through these major social networks and behemoths of the internet industry, the Facebooks and the Googles. Here we're focusing on social media, so it's just Google Plus there, YouTube. But again, that big picture of mobile subscriptions, we have over 5 billion mobile phone subscriptions nowadays and over 7 billion subscriptions. So that's matching the amount of people there are on the planet. So we can essentially reach anyone that we want to or need to through these channels. But what's very interesting in the crypto space is that there's a bit of old school versus new school. And we're seeing how Google, Facebook, Twitter, Apple, everyone is essentially banning ICO advertising. They're clearly threatened by blockchain. Of course, they'll have their legal kind of pitch saying that, we're trying to protect customers and we're waiting for regulation to be clarified. I'm sure that governments, especially the U.S. government's putting a lot of pressure on these, which are mostly U.S. companies, to be careful and be limited in the kind of exposure they give to these crypto companies until regulation improves. Some of that makes sense. I do believe we need some regulation. Not really sure where it needs to or will come from. But it's just very interesting to see a whole new school of companies in social media like Telegram that now has over 200 million users and will probably get to 1 billion at some point within a year or so. They just did a close to $850 million ICO of their own, and now they're raising additional money through a secondary offering, which will bring in another billion or more. So it's amazing to see. I know for, let's say, KidCoin's ICO and how we're going about marketing, we're all about Telegram. We're hardly even listing. I mean, yes, we'll have Facebook and some of the others, but it's really time for a new blood and new school of properties, publications, blog platforms like Medium, and social platforms like Telegram. And it's refreshing to actually see them break into the old power structure there and kind of rattle the cages a little bit. And people in the crypto space are kind of tech forward, innovative, open-minded, and they're adopting it. They're moving over to more crypto-friendly and decentralized platforms. So we won't go too much further into that. Just the last point on that, though, is this whole evolution of .io. .com, although it's always been for years the most relevant domain name extension, and I personally never liked to have anything except for a .com, .net, .tv, all these other things never quite seemed to be as valuable as .com until crypto and blockchain made .io cool and innovative, and now that's actually seen as more tech forward, more crypto friendly, and just more innovative than .com. So most of that is perception, but perception becomes reality for the market and in marketing. And I believe that .io is not just here to stay, but it's just as relevant, if not more, than having a .com, especially if you're a high-tech company or a company that's focused on blockchain. If you're doing an ICO, certainly you want to have a .io domain if you can. So I won't spend too much time on this, but just to kind of come back to an overview of 7 pillars and the reality that this framework, this philosophy, this systematic map was relevant pre-blockchain and is just as relevant, if not more so, to blockchain and ICO marketing. And I've shared with you some of that thinking in this webinar here. This systematic approach for learning, strategy, budgeting, execution, and analysis of the entire universe of digital marketing tactics and techniques. These are the original core 7 pillars of digital, which still stand today, and all of which we've essentially covered in our kind of blockchain ICO discussions today. The fact that Pillar 4, media, which again, pre-blockchain, we'll talk about Google AdWords and Facebook ads as the 2 most important ones. And now the fact that those 2 kind of are not accepting ICO advertising, it's very, very interesting. And I believe that it's going to be their loss at the end of the day. Again, I understand in part that a lot of ICO marketing has been and can be based on unregulated companies, or there's been frauds, there's been scams, there's been a lot of negative things that have happened and the people that have raised capital have done. But for the most part, the net sum has been positive. So when people say things like 80% of blockchain companies and ICOs are failing after the fact, so they've been successful raising the capital, but they failed as companies after the fact, my response to that is, okay, how's that any different than or worse than traditional startups? Of course, startups, just because they've raised money doesn't mean they're going to succeed. So taking the 5–10% that might be pure scams out, and I don't even know if the number's that high, all the legitimate and authentic and well-intentioned companies still only have a 10% chance of success, regardless of how much money they've raised. Raising capital isn't the only important component or success benchmark of a company or recipe ingredient that they need to succeed. Therefore, I believe that Facebook and Google not accepting advertising is only going to open up opportunities for other channels like CoinMarketCap and all the other blogs and Bitcoin Talk. There's plenty of other websites to advertise your ICOs on. And Pillar 5 here and 6 really working together, CRM and social media. CRM is the way you connect to and relate to and manage your community, as we've highlighted, whether it's through social media, email marketing, sending regular emails and updates about what your company's doing, and the different progress you're making is vital. So those 2 pillars are essential in this overall model. And obviously we've talked about pillars 1 and 2, how your UX, your design, your branding, your content, your videos, your explainer videos are all essential elements of your overall ICO marketing. Now, we've also highlighted how the traditional marketing pillars, things like sales, PR, events, going to conferences, complement your digital strategy. I think it's all important. So when we look at integrated marketing, we consider both the digital and the traditional and how they work together to support your venture. And I think the most important ones on this list here, on the traditional side of the column there, is certainly events, those events and conferences. So I'm not going to get too far into the matrix, but I will just want to highlight that briefly, that at 7 Pillars, we're actually building an application right now that essentially tracks and replicates the strategic thinking and implementations that we've done, those thousands of campaigns, those hundreds of clients that we've worked with to build successful ROI-driven marketing plans over the last 17 years. We've distilled all of that into this 7 Pillars philosophy. There is a book, and then there's also an application that we're building, which essentially allows marketers and entrepreneurs to utilize an application that could help drive and guide their overall marketing journey. In absence of that app, since it's not ready today, should be ready by the end of 2018, we have these kind of webinars and talks, and obviously our own services that we could provide. Our affiliated agency, Blue Liner, as I highlighted at the beginning, is fastly becoming an expert in ICO marketing. If you have any questions about that or interest in working with our blockchain marketing team, please reach out. I didn't actually post my information here on this slideshow, but can do in follow-up when we send out an email with this deck. It is just my first name, Arman, A-R-M-A-N, at Kidcoin, K-I-D-C-O-I-N-E, no E, C-O-I-N.com. Please reach out with any questions. You also see our social handles here for 7 Pillars and Blue Liner. So again, we've got this portfolio of companies largely focused on digital marketing with a strong presence now in blockchain and ICO marketing. It's been a great journey. It's going to continue to evolve. I think that's the last thing I'll leave us with. It's that this field is so rapidly changing, and what those 7 primary pillars were, which I'll just kind of go back to that slide quickly. What's here I don't believe is going to change, but there could be new components added in. Or when we focus on, let's say, community, there could be new kind of rules of engagement for things like, let's say, some legal issues around how bounties and airdrops are given. So for best practices in each of these areas, we have to kind of continue looking at what's coming out, what others are doing and succeeding with. And we may have to be ready to, we should be ready to modify our approach as we go forward. But I think the big picture is, that I'll leave you with, is that this isn't easy, this isn't necessarily cheap, and it's not going to be fast. So if you have those kind of ideas in your mind about how we can do this on the cheap, doesn't mean you can't, but you have to kind of be grounded in reality here if you want to have a true cryptocurrency or blockchain-based company. it's a long-term vision. I've had a few people that run companies approach me and say, we want to do an ICO. And the first thing I said is, are you ready to basically live out of a suitcase for the next 6 months and travel at least half the time? Are you ready to spend at least $100,000 on legal and at least several $100,000 on marketing? If you're not ready to do that or feel like you can access the capital to do that, it's a pipe dream. So not that that's insurmountable. All those things are possible. You just have to be ready to take those chances, take those risks. This is as high risk and adventurous of a business proposition as there's ever been. That's what makes it exciting, for entrepreneurs like myself and others that are in the space. I certainly welcome any questions that you have by email or give us a call in the office here in Jersey City. Thanks for your time. The deck will be available. We'll make sure to send it to everyone that's participated in follow-up, and we will see you for the next webinar. We usually have an event at least once a month. Take care.